see me.
Yeah, and hear you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, welcome to our VPA event with TV Jerry Williams. So that's a little bit of a mouthful there. But some of you all might not know, he's credited with being the first president of what is the VPA. And he's been a long time in the Richmond and Virginia film community. He's got a varied past, best known as a director. And more recently, he directed a film here on, I guess that word is used in the film, the Richmond icon.
Yeah.
Donnie, Dirtwoman Corker. And he unfortunately passed away a few years ago. I guess it was 2017. Everyone in Richmond, I think, knew him. Everyone in the writing, arts, news community, political community, the cultural community, you go down the list. I thought we talked today about making film, getting his documentary out, which this labor of love that looks like took place almost 20 years of filming and this project in mind, and finally putting it together, getting it out into the world of movies and into the festival world, and now available for streaming, correct?
Correct. And technically on DVD, but nobody's buying them, which is fine.
Well, I will buy one. I'm beginning to think that we might have to buy our hard media while we can. Yeah. But I will also let you all know that just before we start, VPA is running a membership special now for new members, $35. And we expect to have David Crank, our Virginia Oscar-nominated set designer, for next month, I think on the 12th. So look for those things. Check our website for that membership special, and we'd love to have you be a part of putting on events like this and helping us campaign for film incentives and film development here in Virginia. So why don't we get started about this here? I guess, Jerry, many people know you, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you born, grew up? Let's start with a little bit of a bio there, and then the career.
Okay. By the way, I've been sitting here adjusting because I had the daylight lighting me, and then it suddenly all went behind the tree, so I had to turn on the light I had set up, and it's too bright. But excuse the contrast. Actually, I was born and raised in Florida, the son of a Baptist preacher, believe it or not. That changed when I came to college. I came to RPI, which is now VCU, in theater and directing in 1967, and graduated. Spent a year in Charlottesville running a record store, came back, got my start in, well, actually I was a DJ in college. I started Richmond's first underground radio show in 1971 to 1970, and came back to Richmond in 72, got a job for then the South's largest furniture chain called Heilig Myers.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
yeah, and actually on Cary Street was their office at the time, and they turned me loose with a how many of you out there remember this, 1/2-inch reel-to-reel black and white Porta-Pack, and said, make videos. And I was there for 7 years making training videos, marketing videos for them. Then I went to Richmond schools for 10 years, making video there in City Hall. And then in 1998, I struck out on my own and started TV Jerry, and have been, I don't say freelance, I don't like that word free. I was a self-employed writer, producer, director, editor from then until 2017 when I retired.
Oh, amazing.
And actually in 89, there was an organization called the ITVA, which is kind of the precursor to the VPSA. It was an international organization of film and video people, and it ended in 98. And there was no way for people to communicate. And there was this new thing that had come out called the World Wide Web that everybody was talking about. And I thought, well, I want to do a website, but I don't want to just have my demo up there. Well, which of course would have been this big and stuttery in that period. So I needed to come up with some way to make it more interesting. So I created what became Tales from the Grips, which was news and dirt of Richmond's production community, which ran almost 20 years until about 2 years ago when social media just made it unnecessary to do anymore. So that was what I was doing, as well as making my living as a producer. So that brings us kind of up to where we are on this project.
Yeah, but you are very present on the internet, that thing called the World Wide Web.
Yeah, right. Now, yeah. And actually, I did start reviewing movies and plays at CBS 6 from 72 to 14 years, whatever, do the math, and for Style Magazine for 10 years as well.
Okay. So you've been across media, writing, film, and you mentioned radio. What kind of show did you do in radio as
Called Veronica Lake. I actually just posted something on Facebook last week because I found this treasure trove of all these old photos and articles. There was actually an article in Variety magazine about it. And it was Richmond's first underground radio show. It was from midnight to whenever. I sold the ads for it and programmed it, and it ran at midnight until whenever. And actually, when I posted on Facebook, several people said, yeah, I used to listen. And we're talking 1970. So that was a long time ago. I was actually also at VCU at the radio station there, campus station, all 4 years as Sandy Knight was my DJ name. It's nighttime.
Yeah. Now this leads me, of course, to the film here. And the film shows a great amount of this, I think, in the 70s, 80s, 90s. This sort of underground art community in Richmond, where Donnie becomes known. And can you tell us a little bit about that environment that was here at that time?
Well, you know, it's interesting when we went. I'm jumping ahead a minute. When I showed it at Movie Land for the 4 weeks there, was surprised how many VCU students came, and I did a Q&A after a lot of the shows, and a number of them said, "Wow, I never knew this about Richmond's counterculture back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s." So there is some of that in the movie. We talk about there's imagery from it, and people who were around in those days talk about it. But yeah, it was well, like everywhere in the 70s, it was kind of a wild, fun time. There were the discos, gay, straight, everybody was hanging out together. Everybody was having a great time. Everybody was doing, some people were doing drugs, and it was, there was a lot of counterculture. There were a lot of things that started then that are still around today, and others that started and went away. So it was a kind of exciting time to be in Richmond in the 70s and 80s. And Dirtwoman was around in there too, running around, terrifying or delighting people, depending on what your take on him/her. Let me just clarify that front. Always Donnie Corker is his name. Always called him Donnie, him. Dirtwoman was a her. So this is long before the trans he, she, they stuff. This was just, he was never a transsexual. He was just a drag, wasn't even a transvestite. He was just a drag queen.
Okay. Now, and interestingly here, this counterculture, from what you see in the documentary, it seems interestingly interwoven into the city's larger culture. And I think there's a great quote at the beginning there from Henry Miller's piece, having traveled in Richmond in the late 39, 40. Which I thought was wonderful. And I want to go dig up the piece and read it about his visit here. But it talked about the South having this culture of eccentricity and character that is woven into it. And of course, you're Floridian, we're Virginians. That does seem to be a very true thing that Donnie is woven into this.
Right.
What would have been the gay community seems to be woven into Richmond, even though it's very focused on that community. Can you tell us about that sort of balance of counterculture that would have been going on here and the larger community, the interrelationship there?
Well, I've always said Richmond is a hotbed of social rest. So there's always been a very conservative element here. And that whole scene was pretty much around VCU and the Fan. So, that was where the crowd were. That's where all the bars were, Benny's, the discos and the rock clubs were all around in the Fan area. So it was pretty much a VCU artist, musician type of world at that time. It wasn't really, that, as I remember. And of course, as they say, if you remember anything from the 70s, you really weren't enjoying it. So I don't remember a lot of the 70s.
Okay. Now, but it does seem like you, as you mentioned, remember friends from the 70s. And we talked about the community that you're a part of, and they become a part of this documentary.
Right.
You seem to be pulling this together. You mentioned that this was done on a $4,000 budget, but not possible without this network of friends doing favors.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah. Well, let me see. You took me off my list of questions here. Well, Yeah, well, this all got started in 1999. You mentioned 20 years. Got started in 1999. Dave Park, who's a local videographer, been here forever. We've worked together a lot. We were having lunch, and I can't tell you if Dirtwoman walked by or if somebody mentioned Dirtwoman, but we said, that'd be kind of cool to do a documentary on Dirtwoman. So we kind of talked. There was a woman named Liz Throckmorton, who's still around. She was a producer then, and Catherine Leatherwood, who's still a producer in town. And we just said, let's do it. And we threw a big party downtown in a club and invited people to come. Some of that's in the documentary, and Donnie told some outrageous stories. And then we kind of stopped. Everybody got busy making a living, so it just kind of went away. And then in 2017, I was getting closer to retirement. I said, I think I'll pick this back up. And I don't remember what your question was now, but I was getting started on, how did I make it for $4,000? Well, that's a long story. Anyway, so I just started doing that. And we threw another big party at Sound of Music called a toast, not a roast. And that kind of kicked things off. We had some drag queens perform, and some people came, and we set up to do interviews. And then I just started interviewing people. And what I did for 70 people got interviewed for this documentary, and most of them were in Richmond. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. And it didn't start with 70. I didn't have like a long list of, my God, I got to talk to, it started with 3 or 4 people like Mark Holmberg, who was at Channel 6 and was at the Times-Dispatch for years and was a big friend of Donnie's forever. Chris Dovey, who also was a big fan of Donnie's. Started with people like that. And they said, well, you got to talk to so-and-so. And then you got, oh, there's so-and-so over here, and this person's important. And so it just kind of kept rolling for 2 years. And the way I kept it so cheap is I've worked in town again, for 40 something years with a lot of the various artists in town. And so I just started calling in favors, and I would call somebody up and say, hey, give me a day of a shooting, like Dave Park, give me a day and I'll book it. And I'd book 4, 5 interviews during the day. And then I would get somebody else and we'd do the same thing. And that's how I kept it low budget. Now then, hold on, let me get down to I don't want to leave anything out. Let me just mention those local DPs: Dave Park, Charles Tinsley, Stephen Lyons, Patrick Michael, Jim Porter, Brian Gotze, and Alfred Shapiro. Also hired a couple people. Some of the things that cost money is I had to hire people from out of town. There were a few people out of this market who I wanted to interview, so I had to pay somebody in those markets to do that. And I actually shot some of it myself, not much of it, but interestingly, Nick Marfing, every movie you see in the last 3 years, 5 years, it's got to have drones in it. So yeah. Nick Marfing with Altamira Films with a friend of mine. So he came, we shot some drone footage, which actually came in very handy, especially to explain the fan district, because you see the streets fanning out. And then I shot some of it. I have a $300 Canon, just prosumer camera. And there were sometimes like somebody called me and says, hey, there's this guy at the flea market down on South Side. He grew up with Donnie. He has some amazing stories, and he did. You heard him, Steve, in the documentary about sleeping with his brother and some other crazy things. So he's down here now. It's 8:30 on a Sunday morning. We got to do it now. So I grabbed my camera and went down there and shot that interview. There was a guy who talks about Donnie becoming a Christian, and he was actually Jewish. He was in town from Israel for just a few days. I didn't have time to book anybody, so I just went and shot that. But the interesting thing is, my $300 camera, I've seen this movie on the big screens at Movie Land, at film festivals. I defy anybody to tell them the footage I shot versus the footage that some of these people shot with their fancy DSLRs. Not that there's anything wrong with the DSLRs, but if you know how to light, if you know how to compose, you can actually make pretty good pictures with just about any camera. And so I called in those favors. Other people, good old Carlos Chafin down at In Your Ear, been a longtime friend. When I first mentioned this, and I'll get to that story at some point, he said, hey, I'd love to work on music for that. So he ended up not doing music, but he did work with Andrea Steffel, who's down at In Your Ear, and they did the sound mix for me. John Moran over at Sound and Music, where we had the original party, he actually volunteered to produce the music, the song. There's a theme song in exchange for me doing a video for him, which he's never called in favor. My friend Barry Fitzgerald, who I went to college with, he did the graphics. He did the poster, the photograph behind, well, not the one behind me, but the graphics with the silk. He wrote the song and his band performed it. Friend Travis Turner, who's a graphic designer in town, he did the animation for the TV Jerry. Sharon Akers, who did some color correction. And then Matt Lively, some of you may know Matt. Let me, hold on 1 second. Let me get in here to share screen. I want to show you, if you don't know, you've probably seen, he just finished a mural at the new Publix. And
they're in Carytown.
In Carytown, just finished it. Where's start slideshow, and let me share screen here. And the slideshow is going, and I'm trying to figure out where shares. There it is. I'm gonna have to move me out of the way. There we go. These are some pictures. Can you see those without me over top of it, guys? I can't tell because I'm seeing.
I
There
can't.
we go.
I don't
These
see
are-
anything.
You see them now?
No, no.
You have to share screen, Jerry. At the bottom, it should say share screen.
I
Should
hit
pop
share.
up.
I did share screen. Oh, it didn't take. I clicked on it. There it goes. Okay, but now we got this in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. These are some of the
Okay, got
images.
it.
They're there now. Matt did these. We were actually, we're movie buddies, and we go to movies regularly. And I was bemoaning the fact that I didn't have, there were places, some amazing stories. I didn't have any B-roll because this was so long ago. And, you know, back in those days, if you had to take pictures, you had to have an actual camera and film. So Matt said, well, I'll do a drawing for you. So he did one of these first. And then I said, you know, I need about a dozen of these. So he ended up doing all of these for free.
I love
And
them.
if you'll notice, they're great. They not only capture, he did them in tar on enamel. And if you notice, they have kind of the grittiness of Dirtwoman plus a little bit of that sweetness. And if you notice, well, he gave them to me in 3 layers. So some of them I actually was able to do simple animations like this one. The people were moving, the background was out of focus. This one, the truck moves across the screen. So they were very simple animations, but that's what he did. And so that was another advantage to having friends to help pull this stuff together. So these are some of those that we did. Now let me see if I can figure out how to stop squaring. Sure. Anyway, so those are some of the people that I called on to help me put this thing together without spending a whole lot of money.
Now you mentioned that these took on, I guess, the pictures there, I guess, became a focus of the art community for a little bit at a couple of galleries locally.
Well, jumping ahead to the premiere of Richmond, but let me find my notes on that.
No.
Miss anything?
Let's follow your. I don't want to jump ahead. Let's go in the order you've got. We
Okay, I can jump around, but I didn't want to leave anything out, so that's why I was. Well, I did. Let me. Where do you want to go from?
Well, you comfortable talking about just a little bit here about these pieces are used in the film as kind of transition points, along with following the story of Donnie and his different, I guess, manifestations here in the community.
Right. Well, they were used for B-roll because, like I said, there were stories I just didn't have any visuals for. So when I had those, that's what I covered it with. And there were other things, you know, there were pictures that I had to spend. There was one picture of Donnie selling flowers. He was notorious for selling flowers on Gray Street for years. And I found one picture on the internet and somebody said, oh, it's on the internet, you can use it. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Everything I got, every interview I did, thanks to Kirk Schroeder, I had a release. Every photograph, everything was, you know, I had permission for, I had releases signed. It took me 6 months to find out who shot that picture because, you know, it was on a website that was no longer around. Anyway, I dug around, I found it. Another interesting thing happened like that. When I wanted John Waters to be in the movie somehow, because a lot of people knew Donnie. Donnie always called himself Richmond's Divine. If you know John Waters movies, you know, of course, Divine was in Pink Flamingos and a bunch of those. So I wanted John Waters to be in the movie and I was ready to pay him to come here. I would go pick him up in Baltimore, bring him here. I just wanted him to spend 15 minutes interviewing Donnie. But I didn't know how to get a hold of him. I didn't want to contact his agent because I knew that's immediately cha-ching. So I said, something will happen. I happened to be at a Page Bond gallery opening, and there was a woman there who was on her way to a new facility she was going to be running. And we were chatting, and I said, where are you from? And she said, I'm from Baltimore. I was like, excuse me, do you know John Waters? And she said, well, I know his sister. So I'd actually interviewed John back in 1999 when he came to town when I was at Channel 6. I sent him that. I went over to Donnie's house and got the video that you see in the documentary. It says, come see me, and sent him some other stuff and said, I would love, I'll come get you, whatever, please, let's do this. I got a very polite call from his assistant about 3 days later saying, you know, Mr. Waters no longer is doing interviews for movies. He will not be in movies, but thank you so much. I said, well, will he do something? Will he write me a letter? Will he send me a card? And he did do something, which if if you've seen the film, you'll know. And I actually got to present that to Donnie. And actually, he's been great. I've been in touch with him several times since then, talking to him about distributors and things like that. He's been very helpful. One other quick story I have to tell you, another thing that just serendipity. Some of you may remember Al Gore had a TV channel for a few years, blanking on the name of it now. It was all news stuff. And there was a story, there was a feature that had been done on Richmond, and Dirtwoman was interviewed in the Village Cafe. And I wanted to get, I had, Noah Scanlon gave me a copy of the video, but I had to get permission. Well, that website or that channel went away. It was sold to Al Jazeera. And I spent 6 months trying to get a hold of somebody at Al Jazeera. I would go on, I would go hit public relations, everything, marketing, anything, never got a response. I finally found one building in San Francisco that was their office building, and I dialed, it was all dial by name. So I just started dialing in Smith, Jones, and leave random messages. All I need is a name. Please, somebody give me a name. This went on for 6 months. I could not get permission to use this clip. Finally, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, Lorna Wyckoff, who's actually also in the documentary. And she said, oh, you know, Leah Lamb, who actually went to high school with my daughter, she was the producer on that show. You might be able to get a hold of her. I came home, got on Facebook. Within 10 minutes, I had signed permission from her to do it because she actually was the producer of the piece. But it took me 6 months to get to that point of that. So that's another story about just lucking into stuff and spending the money to, or not spending the money to make it happen.
Yeah. And John Waters, now they mentioned the shot, I guess you said it was at whose house here?
That was at Donnie's house. Now, don't give too much away. I want people to watch the movie to see what actually happened. No, that was at Donnie's house. John did not, he would not be on camera, but he did do something, which is in the documentary.
Yes. Yeah. And now you mentioned, of course, Donnie's house there. Just to ask you, a minute, are his siblings still around here in town?
Some of them are, yeah, they still live there. 4 or 5 of them lived in that house. Some of them still do. Actually, his sister and a couple of brothers lived in that house. So it was also a challenge shooting in that house because they have a very noisy Chihuahua, which again, you see in the movie. And Donnie, the first interview we did there, had been bedridden for almost a year already. He could sit up, but he really couldn't move. And he got worse and worse. By the time we did the last interview, he couldn't even sit up. He was lying in bed, and we did the best we could with the interview. Now, one thing that's interesting, people might say, well, why didn't you have more of Donnie being interviewed? Well, Donnie was not very articulate. He was mentally challenged. He was illiterate. So he really didn't, he was not a raconteur. He couldn't tell stories. You had to pull stuff out of him. And as you see, Ray Bentley, who has been around forever, some of you who've been around a long time remember the midnight movies that he did back in the good old 70s. He interviews Donnie, and he knew a lot of those stories because he's hung out with Donnie. So he was able to pull that stuff out of him. But he was not always, but that's what that happened. Now, I wanted to mention the title. This might be a good place to mention that.
Yes, absolutely.
Since Heather's listening.
Know here about
the title. Well, the title's now Dirtwoman. It originally was Spider Mites of Jesus. And how that happened at RIF, the Richmond International Film Festival, I was the head MC for the first 8 or 9 years of that until the movie came out, and then I had to step out because I was in the festival. And they had the Flow Collective on Sunday afternoons, which was a group of producers and local people and people from LA and New York who came in to talk about whatever subjects. There were different subjects, and I was the moderator. And one of the things they have every year was a pitch session where you had 60 seconds to pitch your movie or your concept or your script, and then they would give you feedback. Well, I let everybody else do theirs that year, and then I said, I've got one. And I started reading, and I explained that when Donnie was a little baby, he had spinal meningitis, but his parents couldn't pronounce it, so they called it Spider Mites of Jesus. And I started with that story, and then I went on to explain who he was and everything. And when I was finished, a couple of the LI guys said, well, that's amazing. He's an incredible character. What are you going to call it? And I said, well, Dirtwoman. If you see that name, you immediately want to know, what the hell is Dirtwoman? They said, yeah, but Spider Mites of Jesus, that's pretty amazing too. So I took their advice and went with Spider Mites of Jesus. Now it did get changed, and that was great for the festivals because, in the festivals you get a program and everybody can read, and they can read what the title means and get a little bit of humor out of it. They know it's not religious. It has nothing to do with bugs. But when it went to streaming, the distributor said, we want to just streamline it, because if people are, scanning through a bunch of thumbnails, they need something that's going to grab their attention. And Dirtwoman certainly would grab their attention. So the image you see behind me is what ended up being the final image in a horizontal mode for streaming services. So the name did change to the Dirtwoman Documentary just because it's easier to people to grab onto that.
Now, I guess prior to this, getting it on streaming and all, you mentioned we're doing some festivals. I guess the first one you entered was here, right?
Actually, no, the first one was in Charlottesville. It was the Virginia Film Festival.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Of course, I got on Film Freeway and started using that like everybody does to try to get their movies selected for movies. I entered 50 festivals all over the country, gay and straight festivals. I ended up in 7. So I spent I spent more money probably on getting ready to go to festivals than I did. Well, I definitely spent more money on festivals than I did for a movie. But, you know, I paid for every one of those to enter and ended up in 7, one of which is in South America, just because my publicist at the time wanted me to have an international presence. And the other 6, I went to all of those. The first one was in Charlottesville. It's interesting how that happened. There's a local filmmaker, primarily documentary maker named Tyler Trumbo. They have Fourth Line Films. Yeah, he's over in Scott's Addition. They have a group called RVA Documentary, which was meeting at that time. They're going to crank back up soon. They still have a Facebook page. So if anybody's a doc maker, RVA Documentary, if you really need to know, you can contact me or Steve. We can give you their contact information.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, great guy. And I was and actually his uncle is Phil Trumbo, who was here back in the 70s, and he went on to help design sets and things for Pee-wee's Playhouse. And he's been out in San Francisco for years designing video games and stuff. Anyway, so Tyler, I went to this, they had one meeting, and it turns out Wesley Harris from the Virginia Film Festival was the speaker. So I should go definitely hear about this. And after it was over, I walked up to him and introduced him. I said, "Oh, I know who you are. You're TV Jerry," because we'd promoted the festival. So he said, "Send me the movie and we'll go from there." And so it got in that festival without technically being entered. And that was the first festival. And then I went on to the others. I do have some slides. Let me get those up here. Give me one sec. Get back to the next festivals folder. Start slideshow. Hold on, got to share the screen with you guys. You see that? Okay, this is actually, everybody seeing those pictures?
Not yet.
Oh, you're still not seeing them, okay.
No.
There we go. Okay,
There we go.
back up. Well, we'll jump into the Florida and then come back to that. This is the Florida Film Festival. Now, there's an interesting thing. The Florida Film Festival was very big, and it was a great experience. I'll tell you about that person you saw with me there. Here I am at the Q&A, that panel there. We had a drag show down there. I got a bunch of drag queens to come perform. This is at the San Francisco Documentary Film Festival. Some friends there.
At the Roxy. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, at the Roxy. This was the Cinema Diverse in Palm Springs. Again, there's one of those. I took a bunch of those with Cactus to put on social media. There's the Q&A there. And then finally, this was in Atlanta at the, I can't remember what it's called. Here I am in Charlottesville at the Vinegar Hill. There's the screening of it right there. And then the Q&A. And I want to get back to there's Kirk Schroeder and Rita McClenny. They came to see it, and Virginia Berthollet all came to this big opening. And I want to stop it on this one, if it will. This person, I'm going to stop the share and come back to us. Okay. The Florida Film Festival has a really cool thing. It's a big festival. They've been around for a lot of years, and they work with Central Florida University, I think it's called, which is twice the size of ECU, and they have a film distribution and promotion program. And if you want them, they will make 2 of their students available to help promote your movie in Orlando. And I said, absolutely. So I had 2 people, that young person, I think he's a they, I'm not sure now, and another person, and they went out and they handed out flyers. They helped me put together the drag show. We did a little exit interviews. We promoted that. We put that on social. So that was great that I got all this free press just to go down there. That doesn't happen often, but it did happen there. I went to all those other festivals. We haven't gotten into this yet. I can keep going and talk about publicists, or you want to save that?
But I do have it in the notes. So if you're rolling, go right ahead. And
of course I did there was the screening in Richmond. Let me show you some pictures from that while I'm pausing. We'll come back to talk about publicists because I got that in there. Let me get to this Richmond screening because we did more than just have a screening. Um, the mayor declared it Dirtwoman Day or Dirtwoman Week. Chris Dovey, again, who's a friend of mine, he got the mayor to do that. He set up a dinner at Mama Zoo. Hold on, it's doing the screen sharing here, but I can't get it to do this again. For some reason, it always wants to start late, but there we go. Now y'all seeing that? No, not yet. Hold on a minute.
I see the picture here then of the dinner.
Slideshow is running. Hold on a minute.
I see it.
You
Yeah.
seeing the big pictures?
Mm-hmm. And like the dinner.
Oh, there we go. Okay. There's the Donnie. Okay. Well, now we're at the movie theater.
The bird. Yeah.
This is the bird. This is the big premiere there. Over 500
Wow.
people. It was a great crowd. And of course, they were having a great time. There I am with Cheryl Miller, who I was on Channel 6 with 100 years ago. We had an art gallery called Paint Me Bitch. Eat Me Bitch was at Mama Zoo. Paint Me Bitch was this. Artists who had done work. This is from the calendar, who had done work through the years. You can see all these different artists. They all exhibited their work. Some of them sold. Quite a few of them sold, actually. There's a little necklace. This was when the mayor declared it Dirtwoman Week. This is at Mama Zoo. The dinner we had, it was an amazing dinner. It was like 8 courses. Food just kept coming. And then we went outside and we dedicated the plaque. Now the plaque is still there. There's Heather. Heather, I hope you're still on here because I told her she was going to be in here. There we are outside dedicating the plaque. And there's the plaque.
Aww.
If you go to look at it now, it's out in front of Mama Zoo, but they didn't do a very deep job of the etching on the lasering. So it's actually a little bit, it's kind of hard to see, but it is out there. Let me go back into stop sharing. So that was Riff, and obviously that was a lot of fun, and we had a great time with that one. And I did, I marshaled the press on that one. Speaking of publicists, actually in college I did publicity for the theater department, so I called in all my favors. And the thing that everybody should know, anybody on here who wants to get press, the publications, they're looking for stories. The Times-Dispatch style, the radio stations, the TV stations, they got stuff to fill every day. So if you've got a good story and can present it to them, they'll probably put you on somewhere. So I was in every print publication. I was on radio stations, TV stations. I just got out and hustled. Now going back to the publicist, somebody suggested I find a publicist. This guy actually contacted me. He had pretty good credentials, and I said, sure. Now the cost was $7,000, which of course was more than it cost me to make the movie. And I don't know that it was worth it. Considering I was doing festivals all over the country, he did get me some interviews, some podcasts, a little bit of reviews in the markets. Ironically, in San Francisco, the Bay Area Guardian, which is a big paper there, the guy wanted to do a review. So it was streaming. He said, oh, I don't do streaming. I have to have a DVD. So we sent him a DVD. The review was 2 sentences off of my blurb. He did not even watch it. Apparently somebody told me he just collects DVDs. So I did get some good stuff out of it. I did get some podcasts and some work, but I'm not sure that it was really worth the money because, in Atlanta, he said, oh, I got lots of connections in Atlanta. That was my last festival. My showing was at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning, which was a terrible time. He got one article in, I think, the local gay paper Friday afternoon. So it was a little disappointing that, that he was not better. So I don't know if publicists, depending on your product and who they are, if they're really worth the money.
Okay. Now, did you, aside from your own work there, where you're shopping it, based on your, have you found a publicist experience that you could advise folks that really was worth it for the filmmaker?
Now, he did do some other movies. There was a movie he did about coal mining he put a lot more time and effort into. I don't know. I mean, that's just, I guess the best thing to do is to look at what work they've done and then to try to talk to some of their other clients. And I did do that. And the person I talked to said, well, he's very opinionated, but he can do good work. So, we live and we learn.
Yes, absolutely. Now, now you mentioned the festivals and the opening at Charlottesville and then the Riff showing, but you also managed to get it into a extended showing at one of our local theaters.
At Movieland, yeah. Let me just mention before I forget it, for those people who are considering festivals, a couple of things you probably should be aware of. Let me first find that. I want to share some imagery of some of the stuff that I have. This is called Collateral. Where is it? No, that's the website. Hold on a minute. There it is. Anybody who's considering going to festivals definitely needs to consider having some, having your stuff prepared. I'm going to share the screen now, and hopefully you will see. Are you seeing this stuff?
Yeah.
Guys. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
This was, this is a business card, which that was on the back.
Yeah.
I handed those out like a maniac. The one sheet, which I had, good old, there's the one sheet. I also did a postcard. We see it doesn't have some of the information at the bottom. And this was on the back of the postcard, which explains it a little bit. And then back to the business. So the business card. So it's important to have this kind of collateral and stuff. I think it's very vital because, people do come, there are these tables. Where's Zoom? How do I get back on? Here we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get back. Oh, stop share.
Oh, no, take your time.
Hold on, I got it. There we go. People come, there are tables at every festival. And if you've got those postcards, people will come up, look at it, and maybe they'll come see your movie. I handed out the business cards. I did any kind of interviews if they were doing podcasts or things. The thing that people have to remember is you're there to promote your movie. So you're there working. You're not there to have a party, although you can go to the parties and have fun because that's part of it. You're there to promote it. Also, everything I had was on Google Drive. Every release, the pictures, some of the clips, all that stuff was available. So if anybody did want stuff, I sent them to Google Drive, they could get it. One thing that's important for people to know about festivals, at least in my opinion, distributors are not hanging around looking for your movie saying, hey, I want to sign you. If you're at Sundance or some of the major festivals, obviously South by Southwest, some of those, there may be some distributors looking, but most festivals, that is not going to be. So if you go into the festival thinking you're going to get a distribution deal, forget it. You're there to network, to meet other people. I tell you, one of the best things that I got out of one of the festivals was about sales agents. Some of you probably heard about sales agents.
Mhm.
They're these people who say, you pay me some money, usually it's a couple $1,000s, and we're going to sell your movie to distributors. It's a bit of a scam. They're not a lot of them are not reputable. And I had several people say, don't get a sales agent. They will waste your money. So I did not, but that was the best thing I got out of the festival was just that networking. And I did have the publicist, which actually helped some.
Yeah. Now, question about the networking. If most of the festivals do not have buyers at them, and then you have this networking value that you mentioned, where does the filmmaker who's trying to discriminate between, hey, my entrance fees, my travel money, my collateral, what advice do you give them in deciding on choosing that? If they're now, if it's something, some people might say, hey, you've got a great film, you need to be where buyers are. So those of you, if there are buyers there, you want to get it. Yeah, you want to get in Sundance or or Toronto or something like that. But if there's some, are there some way to discern ones where there might not be buyers, but is important to that filmmaker to get into?
Well, it depends. I mean, I wanted to get into some of the big gay and lesbian festivals. I didn't get into the two main ones of those. Doc Fest, which is the biggest documentary festival in Houston, I didn't get in it, but it was interesting because I was trying to plan my schedule around all the festivals and my travel. And I actually sent a note to them, and the head of the festival said, I loved your documentary. We haven't made decisions yet. It didn't end up getting in. And that's one thing that happens that people need to understand about festivals too, is usually there's several tiers of people who watch your movie. So usually there's a first tier, maybe one or two people, and if they don't like it, it never gets past them. So it could be that, the final judges don't ever even see your movie. I think it's fun to go to festivals. It's great to get the feedback. It's great to meet other people. And if you go to a number of them, you can, you'll run into some of the same people. It's not cheap. I spent much more money on the festivals than I did on the movie, but that was okay. So it's more just for the fun of it and for the laurels. I mean, if you notice on my poster behind me there, you can see them down there. There's 7 laurels. Those are in the trailer. So that's one good thing, because it's, and you notice if you see those on anybody's movie, you'll see the laurels like, well, apparently this must be some good because, I met a woman at the Charlottesville Festival who I think had been to like 20 something festivals, and she still hadn't gotten a distributor. And I thought that tells you something either about your movie or about the festivals. So festivals are really, unless you're at the really big ones, it's more about the networking, and you could potentially meet somebody who might say, hey, I know somebody you should talk to. So it's not to say there are not people there that you can not make connections with, but you're usually not going to come out of the festival with a signed deal.
Okay. Now you mentioned, of course, the importance of the collateral, that the posters, the cards, and all. On your budget when you were going in, more what's a good amount? How do you keep that cost down? Is that again back to the favors, the network, the artist?
Nope, none of that was available for that. At that point, I was on my own, and I spent a lot more, 4 or 5 times more than I did on the movie. But again, I was close to retirement. I wanted to do it, and I treated them as vacations. I mean, we went to Orlando, we spent a week there. We went to San Francisco, we spent a week there. So realistically, you could probably fly into a festival, do your screening, do a Q&A, and fly out in 2 days, save a lot of money, you know, get an Airbnb. Well, we did Airbnbs, get a cheap hotel, and do it cheaply. But again, you know, festivals can add up quickly.
Okay. All right. Okay. Great. And so getting to your eventual onto streaming. Now, how did you meet? How did that come about, that relationship?
Well, first of all, let me tell you how I got to Movie Land, because that was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did that.
And then we'll get to streaming, because we did. I wanted it to run at Movie Land. Now, some of you may know, if you've ever been on tvjerry.com, that I've been reviewing movies on there since 1998 as well. I just picked that up from TV. Excuse me. And so I was reviewing movies. I knew the people at Movie Land. They were friends of mine. I had done features on them. By the way, if you didn't hear, the drive-in is not happening. That was announced today. So I just contacted them and said, I would love to work out a deal with you, a profit sharing deal. I'd love to play my movie. And as most of you know, the Criterion is the little theater over there where most of the art theaters go. And most of those, they run other independent films over there. I think Jay had Slave Cry was there.
Yes.
But I said, I'd really like to get it in the big theaters, because I think, we've got a crowd. So we worked out a deal, a profit sharing deal. And I did all the promotion again, got out there and got the press. And we ran it for 4 weeks. Then finding a distributor, I looked up every LGBTQ distributor I could find and sent them all a note and said, hey, I got this movie. Here's what it is. Here's the trailer. Would you be interested? These people said, yeah. They actually paid me some money and sent me a contract and paid me $500 up front, which was great. They sent me a very big contract. I took it to Kirk Schroeder. He made about 40 changes, which they all accepted, which was great, because that made me feel good that he knew what he was doing and that nothing got past him. I spent most of that money they gave me on Kirk, but that was fine. So they set it up. Then they did, I had to send them the clips. We had to make some changes, a few minor changes. Funny, one of the changes was there was a picture from the calendar, from the famous Dirtwoman calendar, of Donnie as dressed up as an Indian. They wanted that out because they said that's appropriation, and nowadays with cancel culture. Wow. I was like, well, he's pretty outrageous already, but we took that out. They wanted to take out the Lee statue, and I said, no, that's a historical part of this thing.
Yeah, key part of the film.
Right. I said, that's got to be in there, because of course it's not now, but there were some of the things that, we worked on. There were not a lot of things they wanted to take out. Now the trailer, and I've got the trailer to show y'all, was funny because I had the trailer that ran at Movie Land, which was custom made for movie. That helps that I'm an editor, so that saves me a lot of money because I can create all these things at home. The trailer at Movie Land was designed for Richmond, but the trailer starts out with saying Donnie got his name from taking the shit in the back of a police car. Well, for general viewing on streaming services, we can't have the word shit. So luckily, the guy who said that line, when he said that part of the line, there were photos over him, so it was voiceover. He's still in town. I contacted him. I said, listen, would you be willing to just say the sentence over again and say crap or poop or something other than shit, because we can't use that. And he was glad to do it. I sent him exactly how it, sent him a WAV file so he could hear what he said. He just did the same thing back. I dropped it in. You'd never know the difference. Let me show that trailer while I'm thinking about it. Absolutely. And this is the version that is now on streaming. And he's actually the first person you'll see. Now, before this starts, hold on a minute. Let me get it going here. Let me get it big. I know y'all can hear it. I'm trying to get it to go full screen. Why will it not go full screen? Oh, there we go. Hold on. Go all the way back to the beginning. And you'll see Aristocal is on the beginning here as the, y'all seeing that, right?
Yes.
You seeing Dirtwoman there? Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Dirtwoman is a transvestite who got her name from taking a crap in the backseat of a police car. You know, hit the police with a unique, very unique man. When did you first know you were gay? When I was about 13. Steal my sister's dressing. Donnie was someone that stood out among those who stood out. Here's a person who overcame adversity, faced a lot of ridicule, made his mark, either famous or notorious, depending on who you ask.
A living, breathing John Waters movie.
My mom had chicken knife, but he cooked the whole damn chicken he was all by himself.
It was 3 whole chickens. Donnie's legacy was being able to live his life, not being afraid of what other people thought of what he done.
I heard that he would steal from a truck driver when he had his pants down around his nighttime. Yeah, and he'll go in his wallet. I heard that. I did that. I did mud rafting, I did yellow rafting, I beat every time.
He stood for the person that was picked on, the person that was made fun of, to basically give you the big finger and say, "Great, I'll do whatever I want."
I had men used to suck my toes in the backseat of their car. Push the envelope. I mean, how could he not? He was so big.
But after you meet and talk to Donnie, you realize that there is a lot of compassion and heart and caring.
Donnie saved my life.
I don't think Donnie will ever be forgotten, but I don't think there'll ever be another Donnie. Yeah, it don't make me holler. I don't want to.
So there we go. So there you see, you
Oh.
actually saw one of Matt's animations in there. You got some taste of Donnie. It looked like it was a little out of sync. It's not out of sync normally, but it looked like it was there. But you saw the laurels and you saw the quotes from all the movie reviews. So actually I did take advantage of all that stuff in promoting the movie by, and of course I had to use the last one. I need to have my brain hosed down because that was too hilarious.
Just it seems to be your logo. Is that something you've always operated with, or is it goes with the film?
The TV Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's been my logo forever. I don't have a good copy of it anywhere. Yeah, it's on my website. Yeah, the JW actually was designed for me probably 10, 15 years ago by a local graphic designer. So that is, and technically the movie is copyrighted by TV Jerry Inc. Speaking of the distributors, let me finish on that. So once they got it and they got the color correction the way they wanted and they got everything the way they wanted. Oh, by the way, there was one other funny shot you may have noticed in that montage of calendars. There's one that Donnie was actually bending over, and technically in the calendar shot, you can see his crack, but I had to blow it up because they couldn't show the crack in a G-rated trailer. But they got it on a number of major streamers. If you go on the website, dirtwomandoc.com, it has a list of all the streamers, not including on demand, Xfinity and Fios, not on Netflix or some of the subscription services. But I did, the last time I heard from them, which is a couple of weeks ago, I said, I'm going to do this thing. They had gotten 254 purchases on Amazon. Now, before that, I was actually streaming it myself. I did that through Vimeo. Vimeo has a great service where you can set it up and charge for your movie and they pay you through PayPal. I also sold the DVDs through PayPal and had that all set up. So I did all that myself until they picked it up. The DVDs are no longer being sold. Actually, Plan 9 has the DVDs and Mongrel had some. I don't know if they still do. But one interesting thing I want to mention about Amazon, because at first I was going to put it on Amazon myself. I thought, why not? Turns out I did some research. Amazon pays you, the filmmaker, for every viewing 18 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And they want you to spend at least $100 because you've got to have captioning, a special kind of captioning, they closed captioning. That's at least $100. So I figured I'd have to have something like 400 and something views just to pay for the closed captioning. So I did not try to put it up myself. So Amazon is not a great deal.
Yeah. And I guess some things for have changed there recently with their announcements about what they are interested in. I think they, shorts and things like that might be off the table for right now.
Huh.
But these giant services, nobody knows what's going to happen from one season to the other.
Right.
But now. The artist that I just want to go back to that the part about his appearance in art in Richmond.
Matt Lively?
No. About Donnie or Dirtwoman, the art community. You have several various paintings, icons, calendars,
right.
And art there. It's all of that. You think, to your knowledge, sold or?
Not all. Well, the calendar has been, the calendar came out in 1990 something. And I think every once in a while, a few surface. Mongrel had some for a while. The paintings, again, a lot of those were sold at that opening. Some of them didn't sell. So it just varies. And the people just did it because, he was a unique, interesting character and they just wanted to do a painting of him.
Okay. And I just want to make sure you didn't lose your point on the experience at Movieland. You mentioned, of course, the showing at, and I just want to make sure you got all your points in on that experience. Yes. You had the Criterion showing.
Nope, didn't show it. It went straight to Movieland.
Straight to Movieland. Okay,
right.
Gotcha. Okay, and for 4 weeks.
Yeah, for 4 weeks. And actually, I did do. Let me share this. Will break it up a minute. I've got my. I did exit interviews. Again, I was hustling. I actually went to every screening because I could, almost every screening, and I would go in before the movie because I lived 10 minutes, so it was easy. Went in and said, hi, thanks for coming. Please enjoy the movie. Stay through the credits because there's a funny thing. Did you watch till the end, Steve, to watch
the punchline?
I
sure did.
There's a punch. Well, you wanted to look for names you knew too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So I tell people to stay and I'll be back for Q&A. So I came back and did the Q&A almost every time. The first 2 nights, I went with my little $300 camera and set it up. I had a friend, actually my husband helped do the interviews and another friend was grabbing people over. And I put together an exit interview reel that I posted all over the place it's actually still up on the website. Speaking of which, this is a funny story. Dirtwoman.com was already taken. Dirtwoman.com, if you go there, is actually a dildo site, which is like, really, you would call, I don't know what woman would want a dildo site called Dirtwoman. Maybe it's something like, Eve's Secret or something. But I even contacted them. I said, you realize there is a Dirtwoman, and they'd never contacted me back. So that's why I went with Dirtwoman.com. But I did do an exit interview series that I'm going to pull up here. There's some kind of funny ones in that. So hold on 1 second. Let me get back into sharing the screen. And where's my share screen? I put it at the bottom for the beginning and at the top for the end. Y'all seeing that? Y'all seeing that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Laugh, it made you cry. I didn't know Dirtwoman before this documentary, and I love them, and it's a must see. Very well done.
Great bit of Richmond history. I loved it. And well put together.
The movie was great. Really enjoyed it.
That movie was fantastic. It showed Dirtwoman in all of her humanity, and it was a great retrospective of Richmond at the time. And I just loved it.
Really great. A really heartwarming film.
So it's nice to finally see the film and definitely see the parallels between his really outrageous personality and then to really get to know him as a human and how much he really cared for the community.
Loved it. Dirtwoman lives on.
Dirtwoman lives on. It's nice to see how a new generation is going to be able to appreciate someone who is such a legend and such an icon in this area.
Filth. It was as outrageous as I didn't expect. It was just a good experience. It's fabulous. I loved it. It's a beautiful showcase for the city of Richmond.
Loved it. Yeah, it's really well done.
It was just a really good movie, really well done. It's the wettest I've ever been.
This film was really like a bittersweet love letter to Richmond in that time period in the 80s and definitely a love letter to Dirtwoman.
It painted a human side to an iconic character. It was just tremendous. There were these incredibly heartfelt moments and great moments of laughter. It was terrific.
Literally the funniest documentary I've ever seen. Had great heart.
I thought the movie was great. They did an awesome job on this movie?
A brilliant movie.
I thought it was fantastic. Such an awesome insight into the life of this magnetic person, and Richmond also.
I cried. I laughed a good deal, and it made my heart feel real good. I thought the movie was great. That was very touching. I drove 100 miles and put my teeth in to see this movie.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he actually, that's a crazy man who actually said, interestingly, in there was something that somebody said that I wanted to mention, and it's gone. Anyway, that's those are the first 2 nights, and we use that again to promote the movie for the rest of the run there.
I should ask, are there others who might have some questions, or are we at a point where you think some folks might, some of our participants, filmmakers, might have some.
One quick thing I did think of while everybody's thinking of their questions. The one thing that surprised me the first time I showed the movie for a crowd was how funny it was. I knew there were a couple places that's very funny, but I did not realize until people started watching it that it lasts all the way through the movie. And that was something I was never expecting. So that was kind of cool once you get in front of a crowd to hear that laughter. Anyway, go ahead.
One about that, are there some of the folks you interview that you might think back on their interviews and think, should there be an extended version of that interview out here, where the stories just keep coming or told so well? For example, there was some pieces about Donnie's voicemails. You have 2 great storytellers in there that you mentioned, Dovey and Holmberg, whose writing I truly miss in this town. But are there some of those that you think, wow, as I look back on some of the, think back on some of the real, hey, maybe this should be somehow available?
Well, when I was putting the DVD together, I thought about doing an extended version because it started out over 2 hours. And I said, that's just way too long for a documentary. Nobody's going to watch it for 2 hours, even though there was a lot of amazing stuff. So it took me quite a few cuts to get it down to 92 minutes, which is pretty much what people want for a documentary. So there was a lot of stuff that was just left on the floor that I could have done an extended version. I just never did because I was done with it by then.
Okay. And now you will, these folks, there's some other stories in there, particularly by the police too, who seem to have, I don't know, a conflicted relationship with
Well, it was interesting. I wanted the famous story. Oh, there was another place in the documentary where, in that trailer, the G-rated trailer, where we had to take something out. I can't remember what it was, but the story goes, the lore is Donnie was picked up because he started walking the streets selling himself at age 13, that he was picked up by police one night and he took a shit in the back of the police car. So I wanted to talk to those cops. I was like, this is an incredible story. I want to find these people. Turns out one of them was dead. The other one would never talk to me. He lives in like Tappahannock or Rappahannock. I emailed him, I texted him, I called him. He would not respond to me. I did manage to get a couple of police officers. The first one, who actually was at Virginia Museum, VMFA, as head of security, we actually did his interview in the museum. And then he turned me on to a couple of those others. But I also, the late Judge Tom Jones, who was a neighbor of mine right down the street, I called him and says, look, I'm trying to find some of these judges because there were notorious stories of Donnie going to court and doing all kind of outrageous stuff. And I said, well, how about this judge? I've had his records. Said, oh, he's dead. How about this judge? Oh, he's dead. How about this judge? He's dead. So I could not find any of the judges to tell stories about Donnie. So yeah, there was, and the other thing that's frustrating is I still meet people say, oh, everybody that knew Donnie had a story. And some of them are amazing and some of them I just didn't have room for. But I'm still, every time I tell somebody I did this, oh, well, the time I met Donnie. So, he was pretty notorious in Richmond in those days.
Yeah. Now it's interesting. I think you apparently you had better luck with press and better luck with at least one politician who appears, who is, I guess, known in our own right in Richmond, Reva Trammell.
Well, Donnie is in her district.
Yes.
And she would talk to him once or twice a day. I mean, he would call her many times a day. As you see there in the documentary, there's that montage of voicemails to Chris Dovey that, there were a lot more that I didn't put in. That's pretty funny because Donnie just would get pretty crazy. But he Actually, the day he died in his sleep at night, and I had talked to him the night before. I actually was recording my calls when I started the documentary, and that one's in there, which I'm sure you heard, Stephen. You can probably tell when I said goodbye,
Yes.
I was a little verklempt because I was upset and I couldn't come over that night. He died that night. Riva was one of the first people there the next day because they left him lying in the floor. The people that came to pick him up, the ambulance people, I can't think of it. And they left him in the middle of the floor and they were literally having to step over. I mean, he was 400 pounds. So they got her on the phone and she came over and pulled some strings. But yeah, he was, he used to terrorize her. And as you saw in the documentary, I was able to get some footage from city council when he was in there, not only talking to city council, but talking about marrying Reba, because he and Reba had this crazy relationship.
And and now going into politics, of course, he famously, and you have a poster in there of his campaign for mayor.
Right.
That got a lot of press, although interestingly about its, I guess, despite its lack of success, it's probably one of the most well-known local campaigns in the last 25, 30 years.
And it's interesting, people say, because you'll even, and you probably noticed this in the documentary, somebody says at the very beginning, there's a lot of stories about Donnie. Some of them are true, some of them aren't. And there's contradictions. I mean, there's the story, where you interview Donnie, or we interviewed Donnie, and he said, yeah, I almost won. And then you go to the next person, it's a Style magazine, they said he didn't even get enough petitions in, so he didn't even really run. So there's a lot of that in the movie where, what Donnie says you have to take with a grain of salt because it wasn't necessarily reality.
Yeah.
But that was his reality. So I left it in. I thought it was funnier just to, it doesn't matter if it was true or not. It's what Donnie felt.
Yeah. Well, there's the other involvement in politics there with our former governor and his historic inauguration that I will leave to the viewers, but it's almost worth the viewing. Just all of these mini stories, are just one piece after another of these mini stories, but of this. Let's call it, I guess, the most historic of the modern inaugurals of gubernatorial inaugurals. And Donnie, of course, made news there at that.
He actually crashed it. He actually, and it's explained to some extent in the movie that one of the local DJs at one of the radio stations thought it would be funny to give him a press pass. So he actually showed up at the inauguration in his sweatpants, and he ended up getting arrested. Now, again, you saw the story, Steve. Donnie talks about how a Capitol policeman had a heart attack because of this. That did not happen. He talks about how he took a shit on the Capitol floor. That didn't happen. But again, that was Donnie embellishing the story. He did get arrested and it did go to court, and that's all in the documentary. But yeah, that was another amazing event. And I tried to get a hold of Governor Wilder to do an interview and never heard back from him.
Well, I mean, again, there were politicians who embraced him, knew him, responded, and there were others who, I think, as you mentioned, recoiled.
Right.
There is that interesting dichotomous relationship here in Richmond with him. And of course,
all people, not just politicians.
Yes.
Some people loved him. I have some people who said, I will never watch your movie just because they thought he was a disgusting person. So, and we addressed that in the movie near the end. Mark Holmberg actually talks about, some people think he's a horrible character, and I can understand where they think that, but they didn't know the real person.
And but the folks who seem to embrace him very deeply.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's because they knew him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. The people that embraced him were people who had experiences with him of some sort. There's the story in there that's mentioned in the trailer about he actually saved a woman's life. He actually saved two people's lives. We didn't include the other story. So, he was very dear to a lot of people because he could be a very sweet person as well as a very outrageous person.
And I guess there is some pathos. There's some concern that he does have some issues, emotional, health. So there seems to be this extended, mercy or concern. He's a part of a neighborhood, Oregon Hill.
Right.
I also love the history on the naming of the neighborhood there. And
Oregon Hill, yeah. Dale Brumfeld, who's in the press a lot right now because I don't know the name of the group, but he was in that group that was campaigning to get the death penalty eliminated. that was his job. He went around the country, the state, talking about that. And he actually wrote a book that's been published recently about every person who was killed in the electric chair in Virginia from the 1800s on forward. And so Dale is a historian about Richmond, and he's the one that told most of that story about where Oregon Hill got its name. And then actually, you know, sadly, when we shot the Guar video in 1999, which is a pretty outrageous video. If people haven't seen it, that is pretty outrageous. Let's just say it's a crab shack, and Donnie provided the crabs. That's all I'll say. But Dave Brocky, who was, of course, the notorious head guy of Guar, the lead singer and the kind of founder of it, he was there, he directed it, and he's in there talking a little bit. But there's actually B-roll of me saying, hey, Dave, I need to get you down and do an interview. He said, I can't today, I'm shooting this thing, but we'll get together soon. Unfortunately, he died. I never got to interview Dave, which is sad. I did interview a couple other people in Guar. Actually, Don Dragulich, who's a local, who also is a documentary filmmaker. He's making a documentary on Guar. And so I did get to interview him about his experience with Guar, because he was Guar. Anybody who knows Guar know they're pretty outrageous, and Donnie fit right into that crowd.
Yeah. Another crowd I was curious about that's depicted here, but it's very important in the, I guess, the Donnie myth, and then the Donnie being known, is something the 70s, 80s, 90s era cable access channels. Guys.
Yeah.
I guess closest to YouTube, which I'm assuming you would know quite a bit about. In your work experience, you might know quite a bit about these guys.
No, I was strictly broadcast.
Okay.
Professional.
Okay.
But
I thought when you mentioned your work at City Hall and for schools, I thought those facilities were often used.
no, we didn't. They did do some stuff like that, but not me. I was strictly doing production stuff. But yeah, both of those guys, I luckily, you know, dug them up and found footage, which are just a treasure trove. I mean, they were early 90s, and you know, the quality is pretty terrible. Not only the video quality, but like there's even one shot which anybody will love if they watch it, where they switched cameras too soon and then they switched it back. And I left that in because I thought that was hilarious. This was, you know, this was by the seat of your pants broadcasting. So definitely, those were fun. Again, those were some of the things that took years to track down some of that, or months to track down some of that stuff, and then find the people who did it, get their permission, and then do an interview with them.
Yeah. Now, I guess given that you're a professional at this, that I guess some people would be surprised you would want to use that footage, but it does seem crucial to the Donnie story. There, when I came to Richmond, there seems to have been a number of people, even involved in politics or culture, who were known from those cable access programs.
Right, right. Yeah, it's part of history. You know, I mean, there are lots of funky black and white photographs. That's unfortunate, as I mentioned earlier, in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, you know, there were no cell phones. So if you wanted to take a picture, you had to have a camera, you had to have film, you had to have it developed, you have to have it printed, and you had to have it still around. So that was, you know, Billy, spanked on Billy's last name, who's been around since the 70s, and he's all Billy Pickett. He's got a number of photos in there because he was documenting the bands and documenting all these events. But that was one of the biggest challenges. That's why we have Matt's illustrations, because there was just no footage of some of these amazing stories. So we had to go with whatever I could find.
Okay.
I guess nobody had any questions because I haven't seen
Yeah,
any.
I want to go back to that. Were there any questions from me? Some of our participants here, and the filmmaker.
What is your editing software of choice?
Old school Media Composer. I learned that back when I started doing jobs at Circuit City back in the late 90s. I learned on Media Composer, and I've just been on it. I've tried Premiere. I tried it for a month free, and I was like, and I would call my friend who was a Premiere and say, so how do you do this? And they say, well, you do this and you do this. And I said, wait a minute, I can do that in one keystroke on Avid. And I just went back to Avid because I've been using it forever. So I'm an Avid guy. A lot of movies are still made on Avid. Avid is good for documentaries because apparently it's the best for database for a whole lot of footage and keeping it organized and keeping it working. So I've always been a Media Composer guy. Now, I want to mention too, anybody who's going to festivals is DCP. Most festivals are going to want to, I don't even know what this, digital something projection, digital cinema projection, I think. And to show it, I had to have a DCP, and you can pay a professional a couple $1,000s to create one, or you can find them online. And I found this program. I think actually Todd Shaw Vest at the Bird recommended it.
Todd, yeah.
Yeah, and you just put it in and it creates a DCP, and I sent it to him and he tested it and it worked. So I had to buy a 300 gigabyte thumb drive to mail it to film festivals. Some wanted DVDs, but most of them would take a DCP. But again, instead of spending a couple $1,000s on having a professional DCP done, I did it on this program and it worked great. Right out of the Avid.
Yeah.
And I have seen it, like I said, I've seen it on big screens in movie land and other places, and it doesn't look grainy or compressed or anything. It looks like any other movie.
Yeah. Comment from our chat from Rachel says, you've covered so many aspects of your experience between creating and filming history behind your movie, promoting festivals and distribution. This has been so interesting. Thank you very much. We wanted to relay her comment there.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for listening. Have you seen the movie, Rachel? She'll back in a minute, maybe.
Rachel, I think you're muted.
Well, she could send us a note too, but I was just wondering, has anybody in this group seen the movie yet?
I haven't seen it yet, but I definitely want to, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, but I remember seeing it promoted, so I definitely want to watch it. Definitely will look it up. Can you said where can you is the best place to go to the website?
Yeah, right on. As a matter of fact, that's one other thing. Since we've got some time here, I will do another screen share because again, Tales from the Grips I created in 1999 on HTML. So I've been around on websites for quite a while, and I actually Matt Costello, who's a local musician in town. Some of you may know him. He helped me create this website, which once I got it going, he got the basics set up. I'm trying to find screen share. There it is. Then I created it from there. I ran it from there. And these are just some of the pages. I had an updates page. These are some excerpts from there. I am on Channel 6. There I am at one of the festivals, 2 of the festivals, actually. There's some of the movie reviews that came out. I put all those up there. There's the Doc Fest out in San Francisco. Paint Me Bitch, Eat Me Bitch, that was promoting those 2 events. There we are recording the song. There's John at the studio. There's the homepage. You see down at the bottom, all the different, there's some of the people who worked on it. The website's pretty extensive. It shows a lot of stuff on there. But if you go on the website, you can see all the places that it's available to view, including it's on Xfinity and Fios. If you type in Dirtwoman, it'll come up. I think it's actually just as a clue for you guys out there, since my exclusive for the viewers, it's cheaper on other services. Xfinity and Fios, I think, are $4.99, and on Amazon and iTunes and the others, I think it's $3.99. But dirtwoman.com, they're right there on the homepage. All of them, you can click on the links to watch it from any of those.
Now, I guess, and Devin says he's interested in seeing it. So you've got those tips on where to find it there. But
yes, thank you.
And I do recommend it. And one of the reasons I recommend, I was telling a friend of mine who's in Scotland right now that, hey, you've got to watch this. And because she's one of these, she's doing some studies in Southern culture, Appalachian culture.
Oh, wow.
One of the things that I think is really interesting here is that Richmond, no longer known for its distinct Southern accent. That accent is pronounced in this movie, not simply Donnie's that is commented on, but there is a very Southernness to people's speech and speech pattern that I wonder, hey, is that being lost in Richmond as we become more, I guess, attached to, say, DC, to more Metroplex or something? But it's very, very pronounced here.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the notes I had, Virginia Berthollet, who was a producer at Martin Agency for years, and now she's still a producer on her own. She came to that screening. I had a picture of her in there in Charlottesville, and we had lunch after it. And one of her comments was, why don't you, you need to, there's a map in there where it shows that they came from Appalachia, actually, the family did. And I can't remember what she suggested, but I added one thing. I may have added the words Appalachia on it, but she suggested I do something to make it clear to people who are from Minnesota. Here's Appalachia, here's Virginia, here's Appalachia, here's Richmond, here's where these people came from. So that was a note that she gave me. And I did send it. Heather Waters saw it. A number of other people I had as my early reviewers of it to give me some notes on it. And some of the notes I took, some of the notes I didn't. And of course, as anybody knows, a filmmaker of your own movie, you have to trust your instincts some. I think one thing you noticed, Steve, and I think other people will see it when they watch it, this is not a typical documentary, not just because of the subject matter, but most documentaries, and I've seen a lot of them, and of course everybody has now because they're so popular, most of them are kind of slow and arty and kind of serious, and they take their time, and they're a little precious. This one ain't none of that.
Yeah.
It's fast and it's wacky and it's dirty and it's not like a typical documentary, although I dare say anybody who knows my work as a producer, most of my video work is very fast. It's very highly paced, lots of graphic, lots of deep visually, so it's just my style. And I think that may have turned some people off too, is that it's just not the typical precious documentary.
Yeah. Including the song that accompanies it, the music that accompanies it. And I think I wanted to ask you something that I noticed unusual, and this is not a spoiler, but the way you've done the credits.
Mm-hmm.
I found really, really interesting. You'll again watch this thing all the way through. Watch till the screen black. I thought it was curious, but really delightful the way you presented the names of everyone in alphabetical order.
Right, first name.
By first name. Now, is that a signature of yours, or something you've done before, or
It's easier to alphabetize them that way.
Okay.
And cut and paste. But go ahead. I was going to tell you about that video for the credits.
Yeah, well, you can go ahead and start telling stories that you came up with this incredible creative way of you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, it was just easier.
Yeah.
But that video, again, good old social media. If it hadn't been for Facebook, half of these things I would have never gotten. When I was just, and there are a couple of Facebook websites about Donnie that I hadn't created. I've created one. Facebook pages. And somebody said, hey, we shot him eating dog food at his last drag show at what used to be the Lee Art Theater, which was the XXXX Theater on Gray Street, which is now part of the VCU Dance Department. And so they gave me that footage, which is amazing. It's the only footage of Donnie performing in drag. He was terrible, he was always terrible, but he did do that. And by the way, another challenge I had, the song he was dancing to that I wanted to use to show him in drag was Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. And needless to say, I was not even going to try to get permission to use that song because it would have been ridiculously expensive. And so it's one of those examples of how having something, having to be creative because you can't do what you want to do. So instead, because it would have been just tedious to have him perform, because he really didn't perform much. He didn't know the lyrics half the time. So I had voiceover under it. You see little excerpts of him, and he introduces it and he finishes it, but then you'd have people talking about how bad his drag shows were. But then he did do that one dance number, and I wanted to have that in. So during the credits, for those who haven't seen it, he's over on one side of the screen dancing the whole time. And it actually worked out with the beat to the song that was written before that. The other songs, now the one song that I mentioned that Barry Fitzgerald Thing 2 performed, that was written for the show, and we recorded that. But then all of the other music was library music. I spent many, many hours looking for the tracks that sounded like the same kind of instrumentation and had the same kind of cute, funky weirdness to them, so that, and I think they all work pretty well in terms of capturing the spirit of the movie and of Donnie, and worked in the show. So that music was all library, good old library music. Some people might go, oh my God, but I did I had discussions with 2 local musicians about doing a score. One of them said, nah, I just can't. The other one said, sure. And after a couple of months said, nah, I just can't. So at that point, after spending several months and having it finished cut, I just said, I'm just going to go to library.
Okay. Now, I guess final thoughts. One, if you began collecting footage, and it seemed like in what is it, 99, where he had a birthday.
Right. We shot that. And that was the plan, was to shoot that. Dave shot that too, actually.
And of course, years go by before completion. Tell us the story of that, and then what made you finally complete this? Was it his passing?
Oh, no, actually, it's funny. Somebody did say to me while I was still making it, says, well, aren't you glad you got, they said, well, you better hurry before he dies, finish your documentary. I said, are you kidding? That's the best thing that can happen. It's terrible to say that, but if he dies, it's finished. There's no more story. I mean, I had the reaction. I have, that's the end of the story. So actually, I just worked up until he died, started obviously a couple months before that, a couple years before that. And I forgot what your question was, but I wanted to.
Well, what made you continue to get to over those years?
Well, we just stopped. There was nothing from 99 until 2017. It just sat on the back burner. And I think actually Donnie started contacting me again. He'd been sick. Actually, you know what? Now I know what it was. Mark Holmberg did a story for Channel 6 when he was at CBS 6 about Donnie having heart disease. And I've known Mark forever, since he was at the Times-Dispatch, and I was kind of always been his go-to queer when he needs a soundbite on a gay subject. He calls me up and it's like, hi, Mark, what do you need this time? And so he came over and, I did an interview on Donnie, and I thought, I could start that back up again. This would be a perfect time to do that. So that's actually the impetus that started me back after 20 something years to make this happen, was that interview with Mark.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. And again, can't tell you how much I miss his writing.
Yeah. And interestingly, he's in there. He's the only person in there who was interviewed in 1999 at the Times-Dispatch. Yeah. And then again in 2017 at CBS 6. So it was interesting to see him grow and change in all those years.
Yeah, I thought that was funny, because at the end, he's the younger man commenting about Donnie. But he, like you in this film, I think he found the humanity in a lot of things in Richmond that his writing was poignant and very good. Everything from pimps and prostitutes and criminals and victims of crime. And so he had an insight that I think I wish our media had, that I would love to see come back. And I think Chris Dobie had such an incredible drive, and to see both of these guys in your film is just a real treat for the community and for Richmond. So I can tell you, I really appreciated that.
It's interesting. There was one other story you mentioned, Notorious People. I won't go into a lot of detail because I don't want to incriminate myself, but there was, from 1999, there was some footage of Donnie interacting with a human being. And I wanted to use some of that footage, but I couldn't find that person to get permission. And I finally found somebody who worked with him. And I said, I can't find him anywhere on social media. He says, you're not going to find him. He got arrested for child pornography. I said, okay, I guess I'll cut him out of the movie. So he is not in the movie at all for obvious reasons. But that was another one of those, stories of trying to track somebody down for several months before I could. So he did not end up in the documentary.
Well, we're near the bewitching hour. And so I wanted to ask, are there some final thoughts and advice that you might want to have for the filmmakers who will be following up and watching later on, or some folks who are interested in getting in this? I mean, you've been around from, in this business for quite a while, from film to digital.
Right.
And you've got a lot of teaching and advice to give here.
Well, the only thing, I pretty much told all my stories. I would say this, and this is honestly true. If anybody out there would like to ask me more questions, or if they've got a movie and they either want me to watch it and give them some suggestions, or they've got a question about, hey, what about this distributor, or you know anything about this, or what about blah, 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 don't hesitate to contact me. tvjerry.com is still there. It's Sifter. I review movies. I reviewed a movie today. So I'm on that site. There's a contact on there. If anybody has any questions that I haven't answered, and God knows I've talked a lot, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm retired. I'm available. I got lots of time on my hands. And I've been fully vaxxed, so we could have lunch.
Let's see. One question from Devin. Have you ever reviewed someone's spec script?
Once or twice, somebody has sent me something and I have given them my opinion. So yes, if you've got something, Devin, you want me to read, I'll be glad to read it. and I'll be honest, that's, one thing you guarantee you won't have to worry about me blowing smoke up your ass if I think it sucks, or telling you it's brilliant if I think it's brilliant. So no, I haven't actually reviewed them, but I have done that more than once.
I'll need to finish it though. I mean, I've got one in the process,
Cool.
and it's one of those where I think it's good, but I don't 100% know.
Right,
So
right. Sure, I'd love to. Let me know. Get in touch.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'll just let everyone know. Again, before we close, hey, Jerry, thank you for everything you've done for the film community in Richmond, and being there for everyone. Your service to the VPA, and don't worry, we're going to come back and look for more service. That's how that's how we thank you. The film community needs you, and right now, with our back against the wall with this, with COVID, we are we're gonna need some of our your sage advice, and everyone pulling together on making sure the industry continues to grow. People have used more content probably in this last 12 months than ever, which means
everybody's going to need content. So the business is going to get crazy. People I know that are in the business that I've talked to lately are getting very busy.
Yeah,
which is good.
And so that's, again, fantastic. And we look for more documentaries, more from you. And not another 20 years.
One and done.
And everybody, thanks for coming out. We'll make this available on the VBA pages where people can, membership can take a look, and folks who are interested in filmmaking can take a look, along with some of the other things that we've produced and during this time. And we look forward to things getting better for everyone, getting hopefully as many folks as possible getting vaccinated, and everyone stay well. Again, we are running our membership special. Check that out on our website and our social media. And we are looking forward to doing another program sometime very, very soon with David Crank, who I mentioned earlier was nominated for an Oscar for his work on set design. So that's probably will be on May 12th, I think. And but it will go up on our media. Again, everyone, hey, thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.